Well, thanks for joining me today, Cali. My name is Jen Morgan, and we haven't met before, and I'm Exec Director of the Psychosynthesis Trust. And I was just so inspired to come across your profile a month or so ago, and I just know that you work with Tree Sisters, and I then later realized and learned that you are a graduate of the Psychosynthesis Trust. I think it was group 32 or so. So thought, wow, what a great person to interview. And we're in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme is nature. So I just wanted to, take some time and get to know you and a little bit about your work and your whole perspectives of your journey and what you're doing at Tree Sisters and how that connects to nature and mental health. So yeah, thanks for joining me. And I'd just love to ask you a few questions. So I just was maybe starting off, maybe you could just share a little bit about your own personal journey and how nature has supported your own mental health and well-being.
Yeah, great. Well, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. It feels really lovely to reconnect back with the trust. I graduated in 2006, so it's 15 years ago, which in a way seems like a lifetime, but also like yesterday. And the 3 years that I did Group 32, they were a really transformational time of my life. And psychosynthesis was something that, and continues to be actually something that for me has been a way of being in the world, rather than it wasn't just a training course. It was something that opened me up to a way of being, of finding myself and finding a way back into a more meaningful and deeper connection with life. And obviously nature was a part of that. I mean, at the time when I was doing my training, I was working a corporate job, I was living in London, I was living a consumption-led lifestyle, very disconnected from nature, even though as a child I'd been connected to nature. But like so many of us, I'd followed the cultural conditioning of you do your studies and you go to university and then you get a good job. And back then we did a whole module called Global Psychosynthesis, which really awakened me to the ecosystem and that we are part of nature and not separate from it. What I found, the deeper I went into psychosynthesis, was this, it started to really evolve my values, bring me into connection with, who am I and what do I stand for and what are my values. And here I was doing this job that started to be kind of, in conflict with my values in a way that isn't sustainable. I really got the importance of sustainability through the training. And ultimately left. I made the decision to leave. I couldn't stand in my integrity and do that job and do that work at the same time. So that's kind of the roots of it. That was the start point.
So interesting. And you mentioned global psychosynthesis, and that just makes me wonder, like, what do you think are the most important things? What's the connection between nature, mental health, and psychosynthesis, and like why are these three things so important, for the times that we live in and for the now today?
Well, so we're in the middle of a climate crisis. We've gone through this pandemic. It's affected us in so many different ways. But the bigger crisis is the climate one. And actually, I prefer to think of it as a consumption crisis. It's human behavior that has led to the breakdown in the global ecosystems, which is then driving the change in weather patterns. And so it really, the solution has to come from within. It comes from understanding that we are not separate from nature. We are connected to nature. We are part of nature. And so whatever we're doing to the earth, we're doing to ourselves. My experience of psychosynthesis was it brought me in. It brought me, it was what awakened me to who I am and what my role is in the world. And you know, fast forward 15 years and I'm now working for Tree Sisters. You know, one of the missions of Tree Sisters is to facilitate the shift in consciousness from consumer to restorer. So how do we stop identifying as consumers and being called consumers and behaving like consumers, and make that shift to thinking of ourselves as restorers? Like, we are, why are we here? What good can humanity bring? What good can we bring as individuals? And you know, and it brings us to the question of purpose, which I know is it's another part of psychosynthesis. And in my own life, the last few years, as I've really anchored into, you know, the reason I'm here and the purpose for my life is to restore, it's to give back, it's to be in service. And, you know, and understanding that cycle of reciprocity, giving back as much as I receive. And, you know, what I find over and over again is the more I do in service, the more I receive. So it's not about, you know, giving away and depleting ourselves. Like, we are replenished. Like, am I replenished with, you know, fast cars and, you know, bling, money stuck? And no, but I'm replenished with, you know, soul nourishment, you know, food for the soul, and connection and beauty and love, and the real stuff that brings joy and thriving life, you know. So I think psychosynthesis has a really important role to play right now. The capacity it has to awaken us to the journey of the soul, to the connection, the interconnectedness of life and our part in that. And to, you know, we talk about mental health. I struggle with talking about mental health without, because we learn in psychosynthesis that we are mind, body, feeling, spirit, right? So we can't, how can you isolate mental health without considering emotional health, spiritual health, physical health? It's, you know, it's all connected. And so that when we do the work to integrate, you know, our mental health is often driven by our emotional health. And when we, you know, you go through the training, we do our own work, what we discover is pain and grief and rage and fear and, you know, all sorts of dysfunctional survival mechanisms and patterning. And, you know, and it's really, my journey has shown me that I've had to unravel all of that and face into that and feel all of that in order to be able to, you know, clear the trauma out of my body, to free up my body so that I can, you know, feel the flow of love and you know, the energetic flow of love and joy and connection, and you know, and shift my relationships to people and to nature and to life in general. So yeah, I guess that's a long way of saying, like, it's fundamental psychosynthesis, mental health, but it's, you know, I don't think we can look at mental health in isolation.
Yeah, it's a really helpful description. Yeah, and just a really inspiring story, and it's really clear, like, how you are applying it in your life and at your work, how it's one whole interconnected living being. So is there anything else you want to say about, or any advice you might give to people in terms of how, you know, connecting to nature can support their mental health, or any other thoughts you might have just as we bring this conversation to a close?
For me, it's been about a daily practice and developing and evolving a daily practice that supports me. And it's not, you know, not being told by anyone that, you know, do this or do, you know, there's no right way or wrong way to do that. But, you know, just like connecting with trees is, you know, has been an important and impactful practice for me, and connecting with trees through the lens of them being sentient beings, like they can communicate back, you know. And I, over the years, I've you know, on the mental level, I've read books, I've read the science, I've learned about trees and forests and the, you know, the community and the mycelium and all of that. But I've also sat with them on a spiritual level, on an emotional level. I've spent time in forests, I've sat with trees, I've meditated, you know. So and that on a mental health level, what that's given me is like, I'm not alone. This sense of I know I'm not alone, like I'm part of something much bigger. And then I guess the other thing that I would be nice to weave in is ancestral connection. And this is something that I think was missing for me from the psychosynthesis model, was the connection to my ancestral lineage. And for the last 3 years, I've really been deep diving into that and tracing that, and doing it through the land, doing it through my connection with the land, going to the stone circles, to the long barrows, to the ancient forests, to, you know, the places where the old battles happened, or where our historical stories happened, the castles that, you know, our environment, our history is still really alive in our environment. And again, like feeling that, reconnecting with that lineage of, you know, all the thousands of people that have come before me, and their resilience and their strength and their wisdom, as well as their wounds that we carry, of course. It's brought me home. You know, it's that sense of feeling home. I'm home now. I belong here. I've come of and through this, the people of this land, and it's been a life-changing experience. And that's where the you know, the source, the inspiration to want to give back, to restore, to do good, really comes from.
Wow, what an inspiring story. And thank you so much for sharing that, and just for all the work that you do in the world, and specifically at Tree Sisters. Love to stay in touch. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you for your time.
Yeah.